Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And this podcast, we're going to talk about the biggest hot shots and have-nots of the last couple of weeks. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend, the man who even John Tortorella couldn't hate. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
Yeah, no, I'm very good tonight. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, Torts and I are good buddies, actually. We went on a fishing trip last year. It was amazing. He caught like this huge mackerel. But he's such a humane guy. He just threw it right back in. So, you know what? He's a beautiful man, beautiful and unique snowflake. But, buddy, we're feeling good. All right. This is a stressful Sunday. Our matchups are going off. They're down to the wire. So Nate and I are going to be pretty vacant here at times, just staring at our phones. And that makes for good podcasting for sure. But buddy, I forgot too. This is going to be your and my last pod before New Year. So happy New Year to you, buddy. Are you a big New Year's guy, or what do you, what's the situation like over there at the Nate Niblink house?
Yeah, since we had kids and still have young kids, it's been pretty low key for a number of years over here. Mostly my wife and I like pick out a terrible movie and play some sort of drinking game with it.
Nice.
And that's pretty much our evening. But we make it to midnight and then we go to bed. That's pretty much it. So how about you? You managed to get up to any shenanigans on New Year's Eve?
Shenanigans. Oh my God, that's none of your damn business, Nate. I think you just stay out of my personal affairs. We like to start the New Year's off with a bang over here at the Creamer household. Giggity. No, actually what we do is we just came across this, you can watch these New Year's Eve videos on YouTube that do a countdown and everything, but they're for kids. So like we do a countdown with the kids, and then we all, shout Happy New Year, and then we all go to bed. All right.
Nice.
Making it to 12. It's, that's past my time. I mean, I need my arthritis medication. I got to put the minoxidil on the back of my head. I mean, it's all kinds of crazy stuff. So, but yeah, I love New Year's though, because I don't know. I buy into it, man. I like the kind of forced refresh of your thinking and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm excited for this upcoming year. I think it's gonna be a really good one.
All right. Well, with the new year in mind, we can head over to some newsies. Great segue. Good segue.
Unbelievable. You don't have to leave it. All right. Just right. Amazing.
The newsies of the day are, we got news out of Vancouver, Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes. Both not so great outlooks. It sounds like it's going to be about a week for Elias Pettersson. It sounds like it's going to be more than that, potentially for Quinn Hughes. Week to week is the official prognosis for Quinn Hughes. They're directly affecting some of my matchups that I'm still sweating here today. Unfortunate stuff. Unfortunate for Vancouver in general. Like, that power play is obviously going to look different with those two guys off it. The lines are going to have to be mashed up all over the place. I don't know if you got any quick thoughts, Blake, but what's the temperament there in Vancouver?
Well, it's not good, obviously. Like, this has been a frustrating year for the Vancouver Canucks, no question. And the only thing that has been salvaging it is Quinn Hughes. His play has been unreal, right? Like, he obviously won the Norris last year, but I think a lot of people were like, I don't know. Yeah, it's maybe just a one-off. Like, no, this guy is clearly one of the best defensemen, top 2 defensemen in the league, in my opinion. And he's the engine that drives his team. So yeah, they're going to have to kind of figure things out. Almost a new identity, right? Because everything ran through Quinn Hughes. So I'm not sure what they're going to do there.
All right. Let's head over to the Minnesota Wild. Kirill Kaprizov out again Sunday. Again, destroying all my matchups. I have Kaprizov on 3 of my 4 teams. So, yeah, that's was really hurting me across the board here. But hopefully he gets healthy. It sounds like it's still more of a day-to-day thing, and hopefully Kaprizov is back for the next game. But missing a couple of games here, not helping anybody out who's been assisted greatly by Kaprizov to date. Olen Zellweger was scratched again. This is the second healthy scratch in the month of December, I believe, for Olen Zellweger. And I don't know about you, Blake, but that's it for me. Like, Zellweger's underlying numbers look great, but Lacombe has taken over at least the 1A power play in Anaheim, and now Zellweger, you don't even know if he's going to be in the lineup every single day. So that's it for me. I'm not rostering Zellweger anywhere at this point. Even with Anaheim having a pretty good schedule this week, I'd much rather be rostering Lacombe personally. Let's head over to Dallas. Mason Marchment is categorized as week to week after taking a deflection to the face. Yeah, the update after the game the next day was that they still hadn't evaluated anything. They were still waiting for swelling to go down. So, not a great situation there for him. We will talk about Marchment a little bit more later on because he had not been doing a whole lot as of late, even before the injury. So, we'll talk about that there. Carolina, Shane Gostisbehere was out Saturday, and we don't really know a whole lot here. Apparently, we'll learn some more on Monday. The Canes didn't practice here on Sunday, so we didn't get any updates. But on Saturday, Rod the Bod said, I'm hopeful it's nothing too serious. So take that for what it's worth, which is pretty much nothing. Ivan Barbashev missed a couple of games now with missing the game here on Sunday, but he is skating, so it doesn't sound like he's too far away, more of a day-to-day thing there. Chris Letang also missed Sunday's game for Pittsburgh. No timeline there. Basically, no one would commit to a timeline when asked about Chris Letang, so that's a little bit scary. Is being evaluated. We probably again find out something more on Monday, but nothing at the moment. In that case, I guess it's probably just even more ice time for Erik Karlsson. I don't know if there's a big takeaway, honestly, there for fantasy purposes if Chris Letang is out. What do you think, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, just more touches for Karlsson. They're still doing a weird power play thing there in Pittsburgh. So do they maybe lean on Karlsson a little bit more, and he takes a little bit of both power plays? That's a potential outcome as well. But they do have Matt Grzelcyk, who's been playing power play as well. So yeah, boost for both those players
For sure. And then we've got Joey Decord. He's been missing some games. Apparently, this injury, upper body injury, happened in practice before the Colorado game on the 22nd, and then he aggravated it in the game and has obviously been out since then. It sounds like he's unlikely for Monday at this point. So it sounds like it's, again, nothing too serious. He's close, but they're going to keep him out for now. Jake Gensel, day-to-day with an upper body injury, missed the game on Sunday as well. And then lastly here, Austin Matthews did skate Saturday, which is a good sign. Saw some video, looked like he was going decently hard, I guess, at least skating.
Oh, baby. I'm sorry. 2 giggities already. It's early on. I'm sorry about this, Nate.
It's early on a Sunday and Blake's already in the mood, but yeah, I guess it's a hopeful sign for Matthews. He's skating, but yeah, it's not a real update. We don't really know what that means in terms of his status for the next game, but if you have Matthews and you have been worried, at least it sounds like he's again close to returning to the lineup. All right, Blake, with the newsies out of the way, are you ready for some hot shots?
I love it, buddy. These are fun episodes to do, and we got some bangers in here we got to talk about.
Yeah, a couple of top lines off the top here. Winnipeg top line, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Gabriel Velarde. These guys have been going off. Kyle Connor has 5 goals, 11 points in his last 5. Mark Scheifele has 6 goals, 10 points in his last 5. And then Gabe Velarde along for the ride, 2 goals and 8 points in his last 5. Yeah, these guys, tremendous amount of ice time. Like Velarde's only 17 and a half minutes, but Connor's over 19. Scheifele's over 20. Connor has really good underlying metrics at the moment. 23rd shots per 60, 31st individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Also 23rd in shots per 60 on the season. So it has been quite a year for Kyle Connor. 49 goal, 109 point pace. He's definitely run unsustainable on some of the underlying metrics, as all of these guys have, most notably the on-ice shooting percentage. Velarde at 15.8, Scheifele 16.3, Connor at 16.7. I'll toss it to you here, Blake. Which guy do you think comes closest to maintaining their current paces?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'd say Kyle Connor. I think he's the best of the bunch, right? He's the belle of the ball. But I mean, something that's nice about this line is all 3 players are really contributing and they complement each other so well. Like I look at this line and it makes me think about some of the conversations I had early on in the offseason about how to construct a line, right? And we've got the pieces here, right? Like Gabe Vilardi, he's that forechecker, right? He's a net front guy. He gets in hard on the forecheck and gets the puck to, a really good facilitator, Mark Scheifele, and then you got your sniper in Kyle Connor, who's also great at zone entries and just about everything else. But yeah, they're all running massively hot. But yeah, a couple things that's standing out for me just with the Jets in general. Like, well, first off, Kyle Connor, he's got the 7th most points at even strength in the league right now, and
Mm-hmm.
Scheifele's 12th. So these guys are really cooking at even strength. And then they have the best power play percentage in the league. That's something you don't see all the time, where it's like, every aspect of their game, they're sort of redlining, So I do think that while it's nice, yeah, I think we can expect some regression here. But I mean, we're talking about a regression from 109 points. Kyle Connor, like this guy's best ever season was 93, right? I think 100-point Kyle Connor is like, wow, that was the best you can probably do. And he's pacing
Right.
for 109. So, take it for what it's worth there. Obviously, the other guys are cooking, like Scheifele's on a 98-point pace, Vilardi 71. I think you can lop off like 10 to 15 points probably off their final totals there. And that's probably what we're looking at. But I mean, you got all these guys at value in draft season. So you're loving some Winnipeg Jets here. They're really cooking here. Remember when, before they re-signed Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, they were just talking about blowing up the team, and
Yeah.
it's, and they signed those guys, and wow, that was such a galvanizing couple of signings here, because they've been a wagon ever since.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, yeah, they found an identity too as well. Obviously, carrying through from Rick Bowness into this new iteration of the Jets, and yeah, even improving, you might say, on what they've been able to build. But it does really feel like the team has gelled. Like, it doesn't feel like this is like the most skilled team in the
Mhm.
league, but they are playing all together in the same direction, which is not something that you can say for every team across the league for sure. And it kind of feels like just a testament to teamwork almost, how well the team is playing at the moment. Um, Definitely they're benefiting from some unsustainable percentages. Do I think that Connor's going to end up with 109 points on the season? No, I don't. But yeah, I do think that he's performing really well. I do think that Scheifele and Velarde are as well, even with their inflated percentages. But yeah, I do think that you have to at least entertain the idea that these might all be sell highs at the moment. And something you might want to look at if you are rostering one or more of them is what can you get back for them. Obviously, Velarde, it might be a little bit harder to make that trade because he is kind of the third wheel on that line. But if you can get good return for the other two, I might entertain it at this point, because this does kind of feel like the pinnacle, what could be the pinnacle of a season for these guys, regardless of how well the team is playing at the moment. Heading over to Columbus, where their top line is nothing to sneeze at either. You got Kirill Marchenko, 3 goals, 9 points in his last 5. Sean Monahan, 4 goals, 8 points in his last 5. And Voronkov with the same 4 goals and 8 points in his last 5 games there. Marchenko and Monahan both over 19 minutes. Voronkov close to 18. You got Marchenko 20th in shots per 60, 14th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 8th in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60 in this 5 game stretch. Monahan's numbers are the worst among these three, actually, and he's obviously the one with the most tenure at the NHL level, but definitely some really interesting stuff here. Like Voronkov, 27th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 over the last 5. He's doing stuff as well. Marchenko's on an 89-point pace, Monahan 73, Voronkov 64. These guys are doing stuff at the moment, and they're less unsustainable than I'd say the Winnipeg Jets are at this moment, the 3 guys that we just talked about there. What's your temperature on these guys? Do you think Voronkov can make good on this deployment? Obviously, he's doing it at the moment, but how much faith should we have in him? And do you think that Marchenko and Monahan can just kind of sustain this level? Do you think they've ingratiated themselves enough with Evison that this is just going to be the top 2 guys on the Blue Jackets for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, another good question. Like, first off, I think Voronkov has to be rostered at this point. So does Monahan, right? When they're flying like this and getting the kind of minutes they're getting, for as consistent as they have got those minutes, like, you got to roster these guys and figure it out on the back end. To me, Marchenko is the guy that I'm the most confident in. I like what I'm seeing there, obviously, with Marchenko. Luckily, I'm rostering him in like 3 places, and I love that, because this guy has really found another gear. But I mean, Monahan has been good since he's got to Columbus, for sure. And then, Voronkov's, he's kind of that Gabe Vilardi type player for this line, right? But one thing I do want to say about Columbus is their team metrics. They're a bit misleading, right? Like we've got these guys, they're all in the fire right now. They're cooking for offense, but they're really outscoring their defensive problems, right? And that's something that concerns me a little bit. Like at 5-on-5, Columbus's Corsi for percentage, sixth worst in the league. Their fourth worst expected goals against average per 60. And their sixth worst scoring chances against per 60. That was expected goals against per 60. Sorry. So like they're running really hot, right? And this line in particular. But like if you look at that last game, that's kind of what can happen if a guy like Zach Werenski, who we might talk about a little bit later, doesn't drive the ship and take them over the top, right? Like I think there's a lot of unsustainability with this team, and they're going to have to shore things up defensively because their finishing has been excellent so far this year, but the goaltending's been terrible. And I think something's got to give at some point. But yeah, I think all three players need to be rostered. I do love the deployment with Voronkov. I think he's the most fringe player of these guys, and I'm rostering him in two spots, and I'm going to be holding until the wheels fall off.
For sure. Yeah, the Blue Jackets are top third in the league in shooting percentage, but it's worth noting they're the second worst team in save percentage in the league as well. So, yeah, maybe those things kind of normalize and meet in the middle a little bit, and it might end up kind of canceling each other out to some extent in terms of the PDO and how they're able to play. If they're able to get some goaltending they can rely on for any length of time. So, yeah, I think I'm okay with the balance they've struck. Like they're pretty close if you look at like score and venue adjusted stats. Like they're pretty close to even in terms of Corsi for and scoring chances for per 60 at 5v5. So I feel like reasonably okay with it. And I don't think, yeah, like I said, I don't think these guys are totally redlining. Like you got Marchenko and Monahan in the 13% in the on ice shooting percentage. That's probably high for the players that these guys are, but also like 68% IPP for Marchenko, 55% for Monahan. Like it's not like they're, contributing on every single goal either. So I feel like there's something to give there potentially where they could still maintain some of it. I do tend to think that Voronkov might be the one that's the most unsustainable out of all of this with the 35 goal, 64 point pace that he's on. But at the moment, like the chemistry feels a little bit undeniable.
Yeah.
So as long as he's hot, he's absolutely must be rostered. And then we'll reevaluate if and when that changes, I feel like at this point. Let's talk about Zach Werenski then, because he definitely deserves some more praise sent his way. He's got a goal and 8 points in his last five, almost 26 minutes a night. Fourth shots per 60, fifth individual scoring chances for per 60, fourth on ice scoring chances for per 60 on a 24 goal, 87 point pace now, over 26 minutes a night on the season, second in shots per 60 and second in individual scoring chances for per 60 amongst all defensemen. He's got a 63% IPP, which is pretty hot. I'd probably classify him more in the 50s. So yeah, definitely you could see him taking a bit of a haircut there if the percentages start to normalize a little bit. But 8.2% shooting percentage, 11.1% on ice shooting percentage. I don't feel like those are all that crazy. So yeah, it might be, I might be less than a point per game, Zach Werenski, but it still could easily be 70 plus point Zach Werenski rest of the way. And I'd feel pretty confident about that. Really does seem like Dean Evison just believes in this guy, and Zach Werenski has proven him right night in and night out.
Well, and how many injuries has Zach Werenski dealt with over the past few seasons? Like we haven't seen 100% Zach Werenski, and I think that's what we've got here. Plus, like you said, we've got a coach who trusts him undeniably. He's getting an insane amount of minutes. I think it's the highest, time on ice average in the league. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I love this player. And, we're talking about that line, Monahan, Voronkov, and Marchenko. Just looking at their last 5 games, even where they're all cooking, their on-ice shooting percentage is all over 22%, which is insanely high, right? That's very high. But Zach Werenski, his on-ice shooting percentage in the last 5 is 12.8, which is a bit more reasonable. Still high, but that's the only thing that's an outlier, and it's not that high. Everything else that Zach Werenski is doing is somewhat sustainable, and he's doing it in an insane amount of minutes. This is just a player who's reached another gear, and I honestly think that this guy's going to be in the Norris conversation at the end of the year. We got Quinn Hughes injured now week to week, who's going to be part of his competition. Who else are we looking at? Cale Makar, Werenski, who else is in that Norris conversation? Who else is doing what Zach Werenski is doing and is as important to his team as Zach Werenski is?
Yeah, I think it's a valid conversation at this point, especially just with the raw point totals that he's putting up. Yeah, you're right. He is the average time on ice leader in the NHL, the only player in the NHL over 26 minutes a night at the moment. Mikhail Sergachev just under 26 minutes as his runner up at the moment. So, yeah, I think you're right on there. I mean, I won't miss an opportunity to give Zach Werenski more flowers. Been a big fan of the player for quite some time now, so really happy about the season he's having. And yeah, I do think that there's probably some regression coming from this pace, but even the regression could still be like a top five fantasy defenseman rest of season. So loving that for him. Let's move on to Ricard Raquel, who's got 3 goals and 7 points in his last five over 19 minutes a night. All of that looks pretty good, Blake. 37 goal, 67-point pace for Raquel. What's your status on Raquel? Has he moved himself into the circle of trust for you?
Nah. Um, he's on a strange erotic journey from Milan to Minsk. Raquel. Oh God. This is nice to see though. That's for damn sure. Like, I just think he's got great even strength deployment. He's with Crosby and Brian Rust. Like that's what you call plum deployment, right? And Pittsburgh's still doing, like we talked about, weird power play stuff there. So I don't know. I mean, right now, this last game here, they played against the Islanders. They had Crosby, Raquel, Rust, and Bunting, the bunt cake on one unit, and then Malkin and a bunch of spare parts on that other unit. So I like what's happening right now. He's certainly rosterable right now, but it's not a guy that I'm expecting to continue this type of pace, even a 67-point pace. Like what's his career high? His career high 69 points. Nice, Raquel, buddy. I didn't know you did that, but let's not rule anything out. Yeah, I mean, 67-point pace, he can do it. He's shown that, but he's doing it off of insane efficiency right now. He's shooting 19.5% on the season, buddy. No, that's not going to sustain. And yeah, we'll see. Like Pittsburgh's playing well right now, but I think they're not a good enough team to just maintain this, in my opinion. So I think there'll probably be some slumps again, and there'll be some line juggling, and this guy will find himself wherever he is, power play 2, and we're going to be back to like 45-point Raquel. So yeah, enjoy it while it lasts. Also, he's a mega beefer, so you got to enjoy that with Ricard Raquel. But yeah, he's in the sidecar. Crosby and Rust are driving the bus.
Yeah, I tend to agree with everything you said there. Like, it's worth noting the Penguins, they are like theoretically the second team out of a wild card spot at the moment, but they've played more games than the teams they're trying to catch, and they're 6 points back of the
Yeah.
Hurricanes, which are now. Oh no, I'm reading this wrong. That's in the Metropolitan. So they are currently in a playoff spot, but yeah, like the Senators are 3 games back, the Flyers are 2 games back. Other teams have games in hand, is basically what I'm saying. And the Penguins also have a minus 23 goal differential. Only the Red Wings are worse in the Eastern
Ew.
Conference right now. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that would have to go right for the Penguins not to be sellers. I wonder if Raquel is one of these guys that could be on the block. He does have a contract going through 2027, $5 million per year. Um, I mean, they could maybe even take on some of that salary if they decide that they need to sell come the trade deadline. There's a lot of ways I feel like still where this goes wrong for Ricard Raquel rest of season.
Yep.
For that reason, I'm with you in terms of, yeah, I think this is probably a sell. Even the last 5 games where he's going off in terms of the points scored, 259 shots per 60, 308th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. He's getting
How?
there via a 78% IPP, 37% shooting percentage, 20% on ice shooting percentage. So yeah, I can't get myself excited about Ricard Raquel on the season. 19.5% shooting percentage. He's been like half that the last few seasons. So yeah, he can play with Crosby all he wants, but I am still finding it really hard to believe that this is the Ricard Raquel we're going to get for the rest of the season. Moving over to Nashville, we've got a Jonathan Marchessault sighting after being pretty quiet for much of the season so far. Marchessault now has 6 goals and 8 points in his last five, 19 and a half minutes a night. Are we thinking that Marchessault has finally showed up, finally figured out what it takes to play in an Andrew Brunette system? He's got 30 goals, 59-point pace on the season, is where he sits. And all of a sudden, here he is, 28th in shots per 60 on the season, 30th in Corsi 4 per 60. The numbers look decent under the hood on the season. Where are we at here, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, I like the player. I always have, but we have to temper expectations. Something Jonathan Marchessault did that really kind of wrecked things for fantasy hockey managers is he won the Conn Smythe Trophy. It's like, oh, now there's this expectation that this guy's like some point per game player when he just isn't, right? Like his best season ever, 75 points was his first year with Vegas. That's pretty nice, but that was out of the clear blue sky, right? And now he's on Nashville. Obviously, they had a horrid start. So for him to be on a 59-point pace right now, I'm loving that. That's excellent because if he finishes the season with 60 points, I'm thinking that's a good year for Johnny Marchessault. Like, I think that's pretty damn nice. Like where you drafted him, that's probably fine, right? So, just temper expectations. Know what we're looking at with this type of player. I feel like, yeah, he has a lot of regression coming his way, positive regression. That line he's on, Stamkos and Philip Forsberg, obviously they're doing stuff. No one else is really doing too much on that team, but they're starting to turn things around a little bit. They're putting some good performances together. They have an elite goalie in Saros, save for last game and a bunch of other games this season. But yeah, he's, theoretically, UC Saros, the juice tiger. He's a pretty damn good goalie. So I think things are in place for Nashville to start doing things and putting some points on the board. And you mentioned Andrew Burnett as well. That's a guy that we're a fan of. So this has been such a head scratcher of a season, but I love to see Marchessault picking up his pace here.
Yeah, worth noting, I projected Marchessault for a 31 goal, 64-point season at the beginning of the year. That was with 17-15 average time on ice. On the season now, he's at 18 minutes, and as I mentioned, 19 and a half in the last little bit. So if this kind of deployment holds, yeah, you could definitely see 70-point Marchessault rest of the season. That doesn't seem too terrible of a prognosis to make. 9.6% on ice shooting percentage. It's just been a thing with Nashville. They
That's a
just
joke.
have had horrific finishing luck all year long, despite the clear abundance of players who normally can finish quite well. So yeah, I think that there is something here with Marchessault, and I'm tending to be a bit more of a believer than I typically am on guys who have had slow starts to the season. Heading over to LA, there's a couple of players here. QB and McLovin, Quentin Byfield and Warren Fogle playing on a line together. We are currently in the midst of a game between Philadelphia and LA, just about halfway through. I don't think either of these guys have done anything really so far, but we'll talk about what they've done in the last 5 games here. Over the last 5 for Quentin Byfield, 4 goals, 5 points. For Warren Fogle, 2 goals, 6 points. Quentin Byfield, almost 20 minutes a night in the last 5 and trending in the right direction there. They've really been leaning on him a lot more. He's playing in all situations. And then Warren Fogle has been getting 18 plus minutes a night as well, which is huge for him. He's never gotten that kind of deployment at any point in his career before. So yeah, what's the temperature here in LA for you, Blake? Do we think that there's something cooking here, or do we think that this is just a flash in the pan?
Potentially for Fogle, but I'm pretty optimistic on Quentin Byfield. I like what I'm seeing out there. Obviously, the deployment has been good for Byfield this season, but it just he's failed to take a step and he's actually regressed. Right. I mean, they tried the 2C thing, which he does have again now, by the way. But I think they had him at 2C at the start of the season, and it wasn't clicking. I don't think he had the right line mates. Well, now he's playing with McLovin, Warren Fogle, and who's the other guy? Tanner Jeannot, who's actually come to play. Right. He's playing pretty well. He's putting up some points and obviously banging the brains at everybody out there. So I like Byfield a lot. I think of those two players, that's a guy I'm probably trying to hold on to right now because he also has power play 1. But Fogle's a really interesting one because I read something online here, just a quote that he had where he was talking about the turnaround of his game, and he was crediting Jim Hiller, the head coach there, for trusting him and for putting him in situations to succeed and really boosting his confidence. He said that, in his NHL career, he's never had a coach that's trusted him the way that Jim Hiller is trusting him. And when I hear things like that, a guy's feeling it, right? It's not just it's probably not a flash in the pan. Maybe the production is a flash in the pan, but the confident player isn't a flash in the pan. This is a guy who's starting to feel his plums. You know what I mean? So I think that, I'm interested in both. Unfortunately, like this next week for LA is kind of a stinky one in terms of streaming, right? So I don't know that you're holding Warren Fogle in a 2-game week there, but I don't know. Maybe you are. I don't know. But yeah, maybe you hold Warren Fogle till the Wednesday, and then he's going to get a Hattie, of course. And then you're like, you know what? I'm keeping Fogs. All right. But Quentin Byfield, I think I'm trying to hold on to if possible. And I love what I'm seeing with Warren Fogle.
Yeah, the only caveat that I'm gonna add here is the obvious one. Like, it's hard to envision a scenario in which a Quentin Byfield, Warren Fogle, Tanner Jeannot line is like the straw that stirs the drink in LA for the rest of the season. Yeah, Byfield on the top power play, that's obviously going to help, but feels like he needs maybe just a little bit more than that for this to sustain over the rest of the season. I think he was like categorically unlucky in the early part of the season, and he's kind of getting some of that regression back now, starting to feel it a little bit. Still a young player. It's
Yeah.
easy to forget, I guess, at some times about how young Quentin Byfield really is, especially even just to the position of playing center in the National Hockey League. He's on a 19 goal, 42-point pace, and that's with a 49% IPP. I definitely think he can take a step there and add some more to that point pace over the rest of the season. But it is worth noting that he hasn't really been able to generate a ton of scoring chances. Still, even in this 5 game stretch, 263rd in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 114th in shots per 60. So he has been generating something there. The on ice numbers are not good for either of these two players. I tend to think it's more towards the flash in the pan situation, but the hope with Byfield is that he's not necessarily even on this line for the rest of the season. He starts to show this. They move him around. He gets Fiala on his wing. He gets some other players on his wing, Laferriere maybe. Yeah, and things start to progress even more from there. Guys with a little bit more offensive upside, and he maintains the top power play, and that's his path to like a 65 plus point pace rest of season. I still think that's a possibility for Quentin Byfield, but I'm leaning more towards the flash in the pan situation for both of these players at the moment.
How dare you?
I had to do it. I had to do it. Quick question, Blake. Have you ever handled the plums while crossing the streams?
Well, you kind of have to, don't you? I mean, unless you just put it on your waistband, right? Which is an option as well. But I don't know. That's I don't know. Well, we have a YouTube. We could do a video tutorial. We'll put that up. That's patron content. That's behind the paywall, folks.
Yeah, I don't know if that would last on the YouTube. I think it might get taken down pretty quickly. But
Right.
either way, we should go over to Montreal. Something else that's not going to last too quickly is Jake Evans' 5 game pace, 5 goals, 7 points in his last 5 games. I don't know if there's much to say here, Blake, but I had to give this guy a shout out. Like, what a run for him. Just over 14 and a half minutes time on ice, and he's putting up a goal a game plus some assists to boot. Do you think that there's maybe more of a player here? Like, would you stream Jake Evans this coming week? If Montreal had the nut schedule, a 4 off night schedule this week, would you be streaming Jake Evans?
Maybe. You know what? I'm not going to say no. But he has zero power play time. His ice time is just over 15 minutes. Like, this is a third to fourth line grinder. He's a role player, and he plays his role. But he's an amazing penalty killer. This guy's got 4 short-handed points on the year in 36 games. That's amazing. So, I mean, he's also shooting 30% on the year, folks. Okay, so Jake Evans, like, we salute you. Thank you for your service. This is the type of guy you need to win games. And I don't know, Montreal is not terrible this year. They always surprise me. I always see matchups like, oh, they're playing Montreal, easy win, and then Montreal wins. I'm like, why did I think that was an easy win? I don't know. Like, Montembeault is actually playing pretty damn good this year, and Lane Hudson's having a nice season. They got the professor. Oh, we got guys cooking over here. So yeah, and Jake Evans is helping that team. But yeah, not too much to say. 52-point pace, no. Let's say Jake Evans. What do you think Jake Evans hits at the end of the year? Give me your prediction.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 23 points as of now in 36 games. I'll give him 42.
Oh my God. I'm giving him 36. All right.
All right.
Jake Evans catching strays here on the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Buddy, yeah, he's probably going to get injured just blocking a shot. This guy's a penalty kill wizard. So, shout out to you, Jake Evans.
All right. Shout out to Jake Evans. Want to give some appreciation to these guys who can bring something to the fantasy space, if only for a short time. All right, let's move along. Patreon plug is here. Supporter tier is $2 a month, gets you access to Patreon only live shows. There will be a new one coming up in January. We'll get that out for the people. Apple's tier, $8 a month, gets you the Patreon only live shows. Patreon only Discord channels, gets you show notes. Basically, an upgraded version of what you see on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Also gets you the Apples and Geos player evaluation tools. That's where Blake and I are pulling all these numbers from that we're talking about when we're talking about the last 5 games, the season stats, the season long paces. That's all available to you via the Apples and Genos player evaluation tool. If you're a true degenerate, the Genos tier exists just for you. $15 a month gets you all those tier perks previously mentioned and all questions answered by yours truly. Blake, unfortunately, we have to get to the have nots, and I feel like this might be a little personal for you. Are you prepared?
I keep thinking about the plums. I don't know, like a delicious plum wine, or there's many different ways you can use a plum. Have you ever eaten so many plums, like, and you know what happens afterwards? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, you ever been by a plum tree and you just eat like 12 plums, then you go home and you just poop your guts out? You know what I'm talking about?
I feel like this is just obfuscation trying to avoid talk
Oh,
about
sorry.
Martin Necas, who
Oh,
is the top of the list here for the have-nots. Unfortunately, Necas has 0 points in his last five. I honestly didn't go back and check. It might even be longer than that. Yeah, not a great stretch for Martin Necas. And honestly, he's probably still looks a little bit hot under the hood, like still a 32 goal, 100-point pace on the season and a 14.2% on ice shooting percentage, which would be pretty unbelievable if you had told me that at the beginning of the year. So, Blake, you're the Martin Necas guy here. Do you think this is just some regression coming home to roost, or are there signs here that you want to be a little bit more worried about him moving forward?
yeah, I just think it's the ebbs and flows of the season. Obviously, like this is some negative regression because he was just going nuclear, as we all know, right? And keep in mind, I projected this man for 69 points because when you can project a man for 69 points, you do it. Okay, but yeah, he was on a 109-point pace at one point, so this all makes sense. I'm not worried. Like I don't care, right? At some point, like this could hurt your squad, right? If he's going to keep putting up zeros in production, but I have him on 6 teams, and yeah, it's been a little bit painful, but I also enjoyed the fruits of his labor, for the first however long. So it's just he could be a little bit of a streaky player, but he still has power play one where he's doing a lot of damage, or he has done a lot of damage this season. The metrics, like, they're not great. I mean, his last 5 games, damn, he's really not putting up any scoring chances individually, which, it's just weird. I think Rod Brindamore is a piece of this as well. Like, his even strength deployment is actually a little bit better. He's playing with Jesperi Kotkaniemi, which is, I know you don't like, but he's played with him before, but he's also playing with Svech. That's their line right now, and it's really not working. I'd kind of like them to go back to the Eric Robertson line there. Put him with Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Eric Robinson. I think he needs a burner like Eric Robinson, just a guy who can skate the puck in a little bit differently than Svech has been doing. And yeah, Svech needs some access to Aho. We might talk about him later. But anyways, long story short, I'm not concerned. He's still getting a ton of power play time. It's going to come back. Even if he puts up like a 70 to 80 point pace rest of the season, we're still going to have well over point per game Martin Necas, which is an amazing place to be. And we're all going to be taking victory laps. So yeah, this is going to stink, but I don't think you can get off him at this point. Like, he's gone 6 games without a point. So I don't know who's taking a ride with Martin Necas at this point. Just wait for it to come back. I think it's going to normalize.
Yeah, I think it's fair to assume that rest of season his point pace should still be somewhere around a point per game, just given what he's put on record so far this year. But yeah, definitely, I think the 100+ point paces were just wildly unsustainable. So moving forward, I think you just need to readjust your expectations, as you probably already did once or twice with Martin Necas so far this season. Just do that one more time here and kind of figure out what this player can be rest of season. We can talk about Svechnikov because he is on the list here as well. He's only got 1 assist in his last 17 minutes average time on ice. Better metrics than Necas. 32nd shots per 60, 79th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 44th Corsi 4 per 60, 163 in on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. Now on the season, just a 27 goal, 59-point pace for Andrei Svechnikov. This is a player who still ranks first in the entire league in on ice Corsi 4 per 60. 55% IPP. Like, I think we have some better days coming for Svechnikov. And theoretically, I mean, even if Necas stays on this line, that should mean some better things for Necas moving forward. What's your take on Svechnikov? And if you think that he can do better than this heading into the new year?
Yeah, I absolutely think he can do better than this. I think Svechnikov is a buy low, right? Where we can't say that about Necas just because of what he's done so far this season. But Svech is a buy low, 59-point pace. No, doesn't make sense. Like, you talked about his metrics there. Yeah, this guy knows what to do. Like, I do think that there's something with Svechnikov and RBA, Rod Brindamore. Like, he doesn't exactly trust the player in all situations, and like he doesn't put him in a place to succeed in a lot of cases. This year has gone fairly well, but I mean, when you dig in on his numbers a little bit, it's a bit frustrating. Like at 5-on-5, this guy's IPP has fallen off a cliff. And I guess he's been moving lines and stuff like that, but he's got a 50% IPP. Last year, he had an 83% IPP. That's huge, right? But Svech is still shooting the lights out, like over 9 shots on goal per 60. Corsi for is huge. Individual scoring chances for huge, right? It's just, we just need the regression, right? Because the on ice shooting percentage is terrible as well. So it's classic buy low stuff, but I'd like to see him, if he's going to stick with Natchez, like let them stay together, right? Like, and build that chemistry back up and see what we can do here. I do like the deployment for Svechnikov as well. Yeah, I'm not too concerned. It's been a cold stretch for Carolina in general, and I think they're going to come out of it because the team metrics are still popping off the page.
For sure. I think that makes sense. Yeah, like feels like Jack Roslovic has taken all of the luck out of Andrei Svechnikov somehow, just like
Yeah,
sucking the life out of him somehow. I don't
giggity.
know how that makes sense. Maybe we should move on from the Hurricanes and head over to the Rangers because that's a source of joy for everyone in fantasy hockey. Yeah, Mika Zibanejad, 0 points, not only in his last 5, but in his last 7. His ice time has wildly varied. 13:04 on December 15th was the low point. Had 19:10 in this game against Tampa Bay on Saturday. Had 5 shots, so that part feels okay. But yeah, suffice it to say, Mika Zibanejad has been a horrible disappointment for
Yeah,
absolutely everybody rostering him this season, as have a lot of other New York Rangers. And then you've got Alexis Lafreniere, who could fit in this conversation as well. 0 points in his last 5 games, only 1 in his last 9. And that's with getting like pretty decent run throughout
yeah.
most of this stretch. 20 minutes, 20 seconds, 1944, 1903 in the last 3 games here. Just not going in for many of the Rangers at the moment. What's your take on Zibanejad? Let's start there. 14 goal, 49-point pace for Zibanejad. What do you think happens with the Rangers? Do you think moves are being made? What's the next step here for anyone rostering one of these guys?
It's a tough one. I have Zibanejad in one spot, and yeah, I'm going through it as well. It's like he's trending towards a drop, right? Like it's kind of that thing we talk about with 0G. When you draft the goalie really high, you're much less inclined to drop that goalie when he's not performing. And Zibanejad, not like he was a crazy high draft pick, but he was high enough, right? And we know the
Yeah.
potential. And we also know that New York's power play should be pretty damn good. That should be one of the best power plays in the league. Well, it's not, right? This year, it's been freaking terrible, especially lately. And I think there's only a couple options. You either just cut bait and move on, which might feel good, or you wait it out, right? But I think like the vibe in New York is awful, right? Obviously, there's been reports that come out about the GM Chris Drury and his shenanigans that he's done with the team, like scratching Chris Kreider. What are you doing? Like, that was terrible. That's Laviolette, but that part, the whole Jacob Trouba thing, trade your captain, and in the way that, in the manner that happened, like it just seems like kind of a toxic environment there. So what do you like? What are they going to do? I think probably, I could see Laviolette, his job may be in jeopardy if they just keep going down this road. His job may be in jeopardy. Drury's job may be in jeopardy. They might trade. Like obviously, Kreider has been made available for trades, so we could see Kreider out of there. What does that do to Zibanejad? Because they played together for so long and very successfully. So, I'm rambling here, but I don't have a good reason why Mika Zibanejad is performing as poorly as he is. Like his metrics are down across the board. It's awful, right? I mean, there's nothing much to say. A 49-point pace. This is a guy that should be point per game.
Yeah. It's a weird spot for Zibanejad. I've been kind of vocally off of Zibanejad for a lot of the year. And yeah, a lot of it was that he was really dependent on the power play. And sometimes power plays can go cold like this. He's not been a good 5v5 player for a number of years at this point. I think everybody still remembers that one season where he just went off, huge shooting percentage, had a bunch of goals. And even that was like one of the shortened
Yeah.
seasons. And so it wasn't a full season, but everybody will treat it in their memory like it was. I still think that lingers in some people's minds. I just think that we have like a standard that we still believe about Zibanejad that he's never really achieved in a full season in the NHL, and then B, we also don't realize that how dependent on the power plays Zibanejad really is. And then when it does kind of take this detour as this season has for the Rangers, this is what you get. So something to be learned there for sure when it comes to this kind of prototype of player. But yeah, I think that would I drop Zibanejad right now? I don't know if I would. I still think there's another shoe to drop here at the Rangers real soon. Coach firing, GM firing, something is going to
Yeah.
change. Zibanejad himself could get moved. I don't know what that trade would look like with
What's
the
his salary?
contract
I'm
that he
trying to think.
has.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a massive deal, so there would have to be some pretty interesting stuff going on there. I don't know if the Rangers could even get that done, even if they wanted to. Either way, I still feel like something is going to change here. Don't know if I'm dropping Zibanejad just yet. Yeah, maybe this 5-shot game, most recent game, is a sign of life.
We're clinging on for dear life.
We can hold to it
Yeah.
for one more game, but it is at that point, right, where it's like game to game, week to week. What are we doing with Mika Zibanejad? And I do think it's fair to ask the question. All right, let's talk about Matvei Michkov. Prior to tonight's game, he had not done a whole lot of anything. Of course, now that we add him to the have-nots list, he goes off for a goal and an assist in this game here. But prior to that, it had been 7 straight games without a point. And there was some interesting stuff from John Tortorella coming out about why Michkov is not playing in games where they've got a lead, things like that. They're still trying to teach him the defensive side of the game, and that's a tough player to roster, right? If there's scenarios like the last 2 games before this game, he plays 11, 27, and 901. And that's what you might get out of Matvei Michkov on any given night. And that's tough to deal with, even with the highs. We know what the player's capable of. We see the talent on display, right? But you also have these unbelievable potential lows where he's not even playing enough to warrant being on a roster. So, what's your take on Michkov? Do you have him anywhere, and are you thinking about trying to make a move there?
I don't have him anywhere. I didn't draft. I normally don't like to draft rookies unless it's a guy like Celebrini or Bedard. And even then, they were getting drafted much too high for me to really be interested in there. I want something a bit more concrete. But yeah, like our issue with Matvei Michkov is not the skill of the player, right? If
Right.
like this guy could go to Chicago or go to San Jose and get 20 minutes and he'd probably get 80 points. Right. He's that kind of player. And we were talking offline, Nate and I, like Torts is probably doing the right thing by the player, right? To make him a better player moving forward for his career, for his future. But for fantasy, Torts is tooting right in our face. Oh, it's terrible. And even with the goal and the assist tonight, like he went 7 games with 0 points and really his ice time was fluctuating all over the place. And to me, that's like he got a goal and assist tonight. I'd be trying to move him. If you had him, I would be like, get off my squad. He has name cachet. He's got cachet, baby. So, just see what you can do, like, because there's going to be shenanigans all year long. And I'm not here for that, right? Especially when you get into your playoffs and you need guys in the game, like, and he's getting the 10-minute treatment by Torts. Like, definitely go check out that statement by Tortorella talking about Matvei Michkov. It really paints a picture of I think what we can expect rest of season for Matvei Michkov, and the outlook isn't too good in my opinion.
For sure. Let's move along now and talk about a couple of Dallas Stars. We got Mason Marchment and Matt Duchene here. And we talked about Marchment. He's going to be out week to week, but he still fits into the conversation along with Duchene. We've talked about it before. Tyler Seguin and those 2 guys on a line was absolute dynamite. And what does it look like when you take Seguin out of the picture? It hasn't been good for either of these players. Duchene does have an assist in the game against Chicago. I mean, it is against Chicago, so that might factor into some of what's happening here. But what do we think about Matt Duchene and Marchment when he returns? Do we think that these are 2 guys who can sustain things outside of Seguin, or was that really just the magic? Like it was 3 guys who had something going together, and you take that away, and now it's not quite the same, and these guys can't quite produce.
Yeah, I think there's a little of that in there, right? Like you lose Seguin, like he was obviously an important part of this line. He was kind of the trigger man there. He was at the end of passes while Duchene and Marchment are rushing the puck in. And again, like with Dallas's sort of newfound rush style that they've been employing this year, guys like Duchene and Mason Marchment have been eating. Like they've been really doing well. Obviously, massive efficiency for both players, right? So you know me and Duchene. I think he's always a sell high, but he's been proving me wrong for a couple seasons now. But this kind of makes sense to me. What we're seeing now, and it's just that regression, kind of that like Natchez, right? He was running way too hot. It didn't make any sense, and so now he's in a cold spell, and I think that'll normalize a little bit. And he's on a 72-point pace. Maybe he gets there. I'm not sure about that. I still don't really like the ice time for Matt Duchene. And then now that Marchment is injured week to week, like I like Duchene even less. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think this is a player like he can do things on his own. Right. But he does need the right kind of player to supplement what he does. And those two guys, Sagan and Marchment, really were that. So plus throw in there that Dallas is their conversion rate this season has been god awful, and their power play stinks. Jeez, I mean they've been doing something here tonight. They got a power play goal against Chicago, so I'd like to see that. But yeah, I feel like another sell high. I'd be trying to sell on Matt Duchene if you have him right now. Like he's got an assist in this game. Boot him. Get him the hell out of my sight.
Yeah, 2 assists now. Just got an
Oh, you got
assist on a
there
Wyatt
you go.
Johnston goal,
Even
as
better.
we're discussing. But yeah, I tend to agree. To be honest with you, it was unsustainable before, and maybe Dallas is an environment where that can happen and happen for extended stretches. But yeah, if you do get a sell window, I'm not opposed to it for sure. Let's move along. We've talked about Sveshnikov, but we haven't talked about Jared McCann. Just 1 goal in his last 5 games. It's been a bit of a tough stretch for Jared McCann as of late. Normally, the player we can rely on the most in Seattle, and it hasn't been that way for a little bit now. He's had some pretty lengthy stretches after a really hot start to the season. He's had some pretty lengthy stretches now where he's gone without points or only had a point here or there. So, what's the temperature on McCann for you in the last 5 games? He's over 18 minutes a night, which is nice. Just under 18 minutes on the season, 27 goals, 60-point pace, 69% IBP, which is also nice, 13% shooting percentage, and 12.2% on ice shooting percentage on the season. What do you think about Jared McCann at this point, Blake? What would you project as a point pace rest of season?
Oh God. McCann is a player that I'm in on as well. I've been in on McCann this year. He's still on a 60-point pace, but I just don't like what's going on in Seattle. That is a low event hockey team, right? They like it's just gross hockey. Not to mention Dan Bilesma is just picking up the torch from Dave Hackstall and running like 4 lines out there, 2 power plays. He's not really like I thought early on in the season, McCann was getting prioritized a little bit. And now, like his last 4 games, like 17 minutes, 16 minutes, 15 minutes, 17 minutes, it's not what I want to see from a top line player. This is the best offensive player on your team, and we can't get him over like 17 minutes. Like I'm not like there's a reason I traded Jared McCann for Stefan Nason, and I should bring that up again. I still don't like looking back at that trade. It's still not a great trade. I don't feel amazing about it because I do think McCann has a much higher ceiling, but it kind of like I can see the reasons why, right? It's not to do with the player. It's more to do with the shenanigans that kind of go on with that team. So if I had to project point pace for McCann rest of the season, I'd probably put him in the 60 to 65 point pace range moving forward, unless something changes, like he starts getting prioritized a little bit more. Also, I thought he played pretty damn well with Jordan Eberle when Jordan Eberle was in the lineup. And I thought
Yeah.
that was a big key to unlocking Jared McCann. And when Eberle got injured, yeah, now McCann's getting bounced all around. Like in this last game, what the hell was even going on? He was playing with Daniel Sprong, which is amazing. Chandler Stevenson, buddy, he's just going for a skate. Chandler Stevenson doesn't even play with a stick, folks. He plays with a mini stick. Right, he just does that. He's playing mini sticks out there, but we know Daniel the Slinky Sprong. I mean, that should unlock Jared McCann as well. But anyways, yeah, his lines all over the place, and those power plays are weird as well. I don't like what I'm seeing out of Seattle.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take as well. But I do have some belief in Jared McCann, the player, that he can get back to something. I do think that the Eberle argument carries some weight for me personally. I think you see it in his metrics that it fell off at that point for sure. He has had stretches where he's been able to sustain some stuff, but yeah, I think it carries some weight for me. That being said, like this is a player that I projected for 18 minutes a night, and I projected at that 18-minute a night level that he could get to 34 goals and 76 points. Like, this is a player who's usually really, really efficient, and he hasn't been there so far this season. Um, even if the situation is causing him to be inefficient, I think he can do better than this. And so I do think that there's a pretty solid chance that we get to at least 30 goal, 65, 70 point Jared McCann as a pace from here on out. So I think this is probably the worst that it looks for quite some time. Throw this to you, Blake. Mika Zibanejad or Jared McCann rest of season?
Oh God, I'd go with Zibanejad there, and that stinks. But it's that power play. It's that lure of the power play there in New York. Like eventually they're going to figure it out, right? Like Zibanejad has a monster one timer. Like he's been prioritized on that power play, but I mean that doesn't feel good, right? Like I took Stefan Nason over McCann, and I'm not going to take Mika Zibanejad. No, I got to go with Zibanejad there. I got to stick to my guns. But who are you taking there?
Yeah, I take McCann pretty comfortably, honestly,
Yeah.
for myself. Somebody write this down. We got the Jake
Oh, I
Evans
like
point
this.
totals. We got the Mika Zibanejad versus
Good
Jared
stuff.
McCann rest of season. Let's go.
If only there was a way
Uh,
to record this. I don't know.
if only
Yeah. Oh,
we
buddy,
might
and
be
I
able to
should
figure that
mention,
out.
guess who scored another goal? Like his ears were burning. I talked Yang on Matt Duchene, and then he just pops the hell off. So, folks, owners of Matt Duchene, you better hope that I'm just in a bad mood and I'm really into this talking some Yang on Duchene because 3 points tonight. What the hell are we doing here?
Absolutely incredible. You have that effect on people, Blake. What can we say?
Apparently.
Last player on the list for the have-nots, John Carlson. This has been a tough stretch for him. He had a terrific start to the season, not so terrific as of late. It's 0 points in his last five. It's actually 0 points in his last seven for John Carlson at this point. And yeah, it's a little bit puzzling to try to figure out what's going wrong here. I mean, the shots have fallen off in a big way. He was really carrying the load there offensively for quite some time early on. Now 85th shots per 60, 100th individual scoring chances 4 per 60 in the last five, and 23 minutes a night, where on the season he's averaging 24, so a little bit down there. It's a 38% IPP, which just seems exceptionally low for him. 13.2% on ice shooting percentage, which seems a little bit high, so maybe that balances out a little bit, but it comes to a 7 goal, 52-point pace for Carlson. Rest of season, Blake, do you think this gets better or worse for John Carlson?
I would say better. Plus, we got Ovi back in the lineup doing stuff. He's got 2 goals in 2 games. F me, right, everybody? I mean, what's going on? Like, this is insane. But yeah, I feel like also we got to look at Jacob Chikrin as well, like the emergence of Jacob Chikrin. Like, there's a little bit of a changing of the guard there, or maybe not a changing of the guard, but they have another option, right? And they have a more dynamic player, right? Like Carlson has been offensively gifted for years, right? But he's on the back nine of his career. He's 35 years old. He's still on a 52-point pace, which is what he had last year. And that's with, kind of like muted metrics, poor shooting percentage, poor power play numbers at this point. So yeah, I think I still think there's a chance that he could bump up to 60 points, but obviously he's going to get cooking here. And I think Ovechkin back in the lineup is going to help things for John Carlson. But I do think Jacob Chikrin, whereas I thought that John Carlson would take a bite out of Jacob Chikrin, I think it's the other way around. I think Chikrin has sort of eaten some of Carlson's fantasy value.
Yeah, I think it's at least something you have to consider that Chikrin could take over as the power play guy in Washington. Do I think that's the most likely scenario rest of season? No, but it's hard to ignore what Chikrin's done so far this year and how effective he's been. He also ranks fourth amongst all defensemen in individual scoring chances 4 per 60 on the season, so that's nothing to sneeze at. That's something he's done consistently throughout his career. Something I mentioned in the offseason is that I think he was only behind Cale Makar and Roman Yossi last year in that stat, so it's not exactly a flash in the pan for Jacob Chikrin either. So that specter does still loom for John Carlson. That being said, it is hard to imagine a Capitals power play without John Carlson on it, and just for all the rapport he's had with Ovechkin over the years. I tend to believe that Carlson will be there till the wheels absolutely fall off, and I don't think we're quite there yet. So I'm tending to believe in John Carlson a little bit more at this point, but I'm not sure like I'm going out to a trade for him, at this point. So I still feel like I'm a little bit in between on the player there. Well, that's it for Have Nots. But if we didn't talk about a player that you wanted to hear about, make sure that you join for Monday's 8 p.m. EST live stream. I will go through puzzling players everybody requested in the Apples and Geos Discord server, at least the top ones requested there. And you can join live on YouTube and you can ask questions live there. I'm usually able to get to most, if not all, of those questions. Let's move over to Under the Hood. Mason McTavish is the player that I want to talk about right now. Last 10 games, only 3 goals, 3 assists on 16 minutes, 49 seconds average time on ice. 4 of those in the last 5, though. And I think that's actually helping him kind of fly under the radar at the moment. But this is a player who's 34th in shots per 60, 11th individual scoring chances 4 per 60 over the last 10 games now. It's starting to be a bit bigger of a sample size for Mason McTavish. 53rd Corsi 4 per 60, 25th on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. Mason McTavish is starting to build a little bit more of a resume. This is the 5v5 line, him with Robbie Fabry and Cutter Gauthier, that got the most time on ice against the Oilers in the upset win today against the Oilers. I think there's something here. Like, they dominated. I haven't checked like who they're lined up against. I would imagine that it was the Vetrano Terry Strome line against McDavid for most of the night. So maybe you think that they're beating up on lesser competition, but still, looks, according to Frozen Tools, it was a 68% Corsi 4 percentage for the McTavish line in this
Love
game
that.
at even strength. So huge numbers there. And it really does seem like a player who's starting to figure it out. And this could be a player that really becomes somebody to rely on, at least as that kind of peripheral piece, a guy that fits into your lineup because of all of Anaheim's off nights that they continually have. Again, a great schedule next week, so it makes for a good week to pick him up and see what he can do. I'm getting interested in Mason McTavish at this point. He's had a rough start. I think people have forgotten about him, and I don't want to be that guy who looks at the first 30 games and says, this is absolutely who this player is for the rest of the season. Easy to forget how young Mason McTavish is as well, and how easy it could be for him to elevate his stock on a team that really needs somebody to do something like what he's been able to do in the last little bit. So Mason McTavish is a guy that I've got my eye on, and I think you should too. We mentioned him in the show there on Friday in the waiver wire show, and he's still only 7% rostered on Yahoo, which is absolutely diabolical if
No
you
one's
ask
listening
me.
to us, Nate. What's going on? It's very
Nobody
hurtful.
is listening to us, and it is very hurtful. 18-13 in the game today with a goal and an assist, 3 shots, hit, block. What more can you ask for from Mason McTavish? Blake, what do you think about McTavish? Am I onto something here?
Absolutely, buddy. I love it. I always like these under the hood segments because, yeah, Nate does these sort of on his own, and I just come in and I'm just listening. But yeah, this is a nice little piece here. And the only thing really getting me, super juiced about Mason McTavish is his power play deployment, right? They ran a top power play here in this last game against the Oilers. McTavish still got 2 minutes on the power play, but if he can find his way up to that top power play, man, that would be amazing. But yeah, as it is, like I'm a fan of that player here. I actually got an interesting question from one of our Discord listeners. I want to maybe throw this to you, especially after Mason McTavish popped for a goal and assist today. Would you rather rest of season Mason McTavish or Ross Colton?
That's a good question. Wow. Yeah, I think it's a conversation. I think it really is a
Yeah,
conversation. I
absolutely.
think McTavish's path to minutes is a lot clearer than Colton's. I think Colton's upside on the season is a lot higher because he could stay on the power play all year long, could end up on the McKinnon line at some point. Yeah, that is an interesting question for sure. I think I would probably swing on the upside with Colton, but I really do think it's a conversation, and it's hard to go against Russ Colton if you're somebody who's believing in him for as long as I have. Yeah, I think I'd still go Colton, but yeah, it's definitely a conversation, and that's not something I thought I'd be saying a
Yeah,
few months ago, right? So
love that.
definitely an interesting question there. All right, Blake, let's move over to move of the week. Give me what you got.
You bet, buddy. Real quick one this week. Like I was up big in my cupful matchup going into Saturday. My opponent had a massive game and actually overtook me. I still had some games played on him, so I was projected to win, but that wasn't good enough for me. So I actually had to drop a player that I wanted to hold on my lineup in for next week. It was Brent Burns, he's not a world beater, but with Shane Gostisbehere out, Brent Burns is running power play 1. and he still chucks pucks with the best of them. I like Brent Burns, and I've held him on my team most of the season. So yeah, it didn't feel good, but I needed to get a player in, and I picked up Ilya Samsonov. And what happened there? Oh my God, he got his shutty. Buddy, I love that. He's immortalized for me in the cream of the crop Hall of Fame. Ilya Samsonov, thank you for your service. But yeah, just doing whatever it takes to win. I'm in fourth place in the league right now. I think with a win this week, I'm going to go to second. But yeah, I want that buy. I want to get up there, and I want to do anything it takes to win. And if that means dropping a player that's has value for me moving forward rest of the season, I do it.
Right. For myself, I think I underestimated an opponent in one of my leagues this week. This is in the Keeper League, and my opponent, Reese's Pieces, shout out to Reese's Pieces, legendary member of the Apples and Geos Discord.
Great candy as well.
And great candy. Has been selling players right in our keeper league so far, and so I saw the matchup. I was like, I'm good this week. Should be good to go. Didn't really make any ads. Didn't think about this league too much. Focused on some other stuff, and ended up in a spot where I was really behind and chasing it, and basically had to run 2 goalie streams a night for Saturday and Sunday. And I picked Matt Murray and Spencer Knight on the first night,
I did
and I
too.
think we know how that went. And then I picked Jordan Binnington for the afternoon game today, and I was in a real tough place. Luckily for me, Wyatt Johnston, Alex Laferriere, Kevin Fiala, and my final goalie stream, Ilya Samsonov, really came through there.
You're taking it,
And
Nate?
I am taking that one,
Oh yeah.
but it was very much in question, and it very much should not have been. So yeah, I just want to caution people against underestimating your opponents, especially in a week like this, right? Like I talked about it. I'm speaking to myself when I do a lot of these segments. We talked about it when we did the waiver wire show for this past week about how coin flippy it was going to be, how easily you could lose a week like this, and I didn't take my own advice and I underestimated an opponent here, and I ended up having to stream my brains out and still needed some really good luck at the end of it all to come away with the W. So do as I do, not as I, or do as I say, not as I do, I think is
Yeah,
the
you got it.
I think that's the saying. So that's my takeaway there. Lastly, here we've got to recap the head-to-head streamer deathmatch, and it's a good week to be talking about it because my Braden Shen stream came up with 11.75 kickoff full points versus Blake's Alexi Protas, only 4 points for him on the season. I don't think we need to talk about that. It's only 8-4 Blake, but let's talk
Double,
about what we're gonna
double
do.
the wins of loss. That's it.
Let's talk about next week. So we're going into week 13. I pick first on the odd number weeks, and I've got Nick Schmaltz, who's got 4 games this week. Nicky Schmaltz is going to bring it home for me. Who are you going to take, Blake, to go against the obvious dub that is Nick Schmaltz?
I gotta take the Troy boy, Troy Terry. We got a couple of dancing boys here, a couple old cow pokes, old dancing boys. They've been doing that for years. Yeah, not a hit or a perif to be found from these two players, but Jimmy Crackhorn and I don't care. We're going for it. Why the hell are these two players still rostered 25% and under? I don't understand.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Both of these guys now well over a 60-point pace on the season. Both of them getting good minutes, over 18 and a half minutes for both these players. Good underlying metrics on the season. I mean, what drew me to Nick Schmaltz and why I chose him over Troy Terry, who I would take as the second best player available this week, is the last 5 games and on the season, Nick Schmaltz has been doing something he's never really done in the course of his career. I would say 36 shots per 60 and 12th in individual scoring chances for per 60 over the last 5 games is Nick Schmaltz. On the season, 46th in individual scoring chances for per 60. I really like that. I think there's even more bounces coming his way, and I do think that Nick Schmaltz is going to bring me fantasy gold in the head-to-head streamer deathmatch this week. Book it. All right.
Booked.
If you've made it this far, you should absolutely join the Apples and Geos Discord community. Link in the description below. Like, rate, review, subscribe, comment. All of that does help us out a tremendous amount. Well, that's going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully, it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band. They're there for supplying music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.